Okay, next question. Is homelessness really our responsibility? Why don't these people just get a job? So that's a good question. And the answer is a little bit complex. So in terms of, first of all, is it our responsibility? Our responsibility as individuals, our responsibility as a county, as a town, as a state and national government. And there's two levels to that. The first is that I've worked it out, and various government agencies basically take 50% of my money by law. Now, it can be 15% for Social Security by law, another 30% for income tax by law, another 10% sales tax by law, then additional agency fees for this, insurance for that by law. There's a whole variety of different fees that are required by law. And while not all of these end up in, governing agencies, one of the premises upon which any government interacts with its people, if it's considered a democracy and in a democracy for the people, is we're going to take all this money from you. And what we're going to do is we're going to hire ourselves. You're going to give me a job, and I will be a public servant. Now, my oath is to serve the people equally, to represent all of the people. And this includes our homeless people. It certainly includes people in natural disasters and in man-made disasters. It includes our most vulnerable citizens. They are actually the ones that need this, support the most. So to the extent that that tax money is being used, is turned around and used to make getting a home harder, unaffordable, is used to harass you as you're trying to get through the day, that is an abuse of power. And so, for example, in Marin County, first of all, they spent taxpayer money discussing a law, and then passed a law, and then police dollars enforcing a law that makes it illegal for people to sleep in their cars. So if your rent is beyond your ability to pay, and you're saying, okay, I want to be a responsible person, I'll sleep in my car. Now, do think about this a moment. No one in their right mind who's got a nice pad says, gee, I think I'd prefer sleeping in my car. If that was rational, then none of us would have houses. We'd all be sleeping in our cars. So it's not the first choice. Things have got to be pretty uncomfortable for any individual to sleep in their car. Now, if we can get our heads around that, anyone in their car has got some very uncomfortable shit going on in their life. And for us to turn around and say, okay, we're not showing up for you as a government. We're not showing up for you as a town. We understand you've got some really difficult shit going on in your life. That's why you're in your car. So here's an idea. Let's charge the police with the responsibility of driving along, waking you up wherever you're sleeping, and telling you to go nowhere in particular, just to make sure that you know that you're not wanted here. That's sick. And we are directly responsible for that policy. But there's other things that we do, and governments around the country are doing different. Various people have put up tents in places where there's unused land. And they have had these tents removed forcibly by our police. So they can't sleep in tents either. So they can't sleep in tents, they can't sleep in their car. How about public parks? Well, out in China Camp, if you drive out there at 1 a.m. in the morning, which I did recently, you may meet a friendly security guard. It's a private security agency. And what's his job? He puts CO2 in the atmosphere all night long, driving up and down China Camp. And he has one job. Out in the middle of nowhere on public land, his job is to wake up anyone who has the audacity to think that public land would be used for the public and tell them to go somewhere else, knowing perfectly well that there's nowhere else to go. So are we responsible? Yes, we are responsible. Now then, well, why don't these people just afford, the average home being $1 million? Why don't they just get a home? Well, again, go back to the question, would anyone be out in a tent? Do you feel like going out in a tent and being harassed by the police? Would anyone be doing that if they could afford that? So why can't they afford that? Well, there's a whole host of reasons. Unlike Denmark, we don't have free, excellent health care. Unlike Denmark, we're not paid to go to college, and so there may not be a suitable job for our skill level. And there's also a housing shortage created in part by the innovations in Silicon Valley and some of our big employers in Marin. There's a housing shortage. And why is there a housing shortage? Well, I'll tell you why there's a housing shortage. When I went to get a building permit for my land in the unincorporated area of San Rafael, I was told the permit would cost $30,000. It would take probably 3 years to get a permit, that they discouraged me from building at all. They charged me $300 an hour to throw up every barrier they could, and said, sorry, we had to go. And so having experienced intelligent building departments in other parts of the country where it took $2,000, 2 months, and a friendly building department that didn't interfere and try and redesign your house in every way, I thought, these guys don't want me to build a house. They want to grind me into the ground. And then it's not just the building permit, it's, $50,000 for water hookup. Well, how about I do my own off-grid reverse osmosis harvesting rainwater? Nah, we don't care about that. We want you to save water, but we want you to hook up to the water so you can't save water. There's all this confusion. So that's on us. That's our tax money at work, raising the average home price in Marin by more than $200,000. In other words, if our government would just get out of the way and say, build the houses you want as long as you can get on with your neighbors. Like I met both of my neighbors before I got involved, even with purchasing the land. They both loved my design. That wasn't good enough for Marin County. I came up with a good engineering plan with my engineer. He said it was a great design. But then he said that engineering costs in California are double. Well, no, foundation costs are double what it would be in another state, because he couldn't do the true science of calculation to the 100-year earthquake. He had to double his calculation to meet state law. Well, sounds fair enough. Who doesn't want twice as good a foundation as you actually need? Well, let's put it another way. Who wants to spend an additional $75,000 of unnecessary money to double the cost of your foundation? You, anyone else? Well, certainly our homeless don't want to either. And so when government jacks up the cost of housing in the way that is not in everyone's interest, and two, as a result of that, curtails the development of housing in the region so there's not enough housing, and consequently jacks up rent beyond the average ability of someone to comfortably pay, and then persecutes them in their car, then yes, it does get to the point where we are responsible. So why don't these people just get a job? Well, once we've successfully evicted a certain number of people from their houses, it's much harder to get a job when you put down on your job application that you don't have a home, when your confidence is beaten down because you've been treated like an animal, hunted by the police, and finally, when you don't have the space to take a shower and get comfortable and do laundry and all that as easily as you would if you actually had a home. So it's much easier to get a job, in other words, if you've got a home. But rent prices are so high in Marin that even if you have a job, it's not a guarantee that you can pay rent.